Well, good afternoon, Michiganders. It is Tuesday, November 17th. And of course, this is Tuesday with Tom, Michigan's only weekly internet show where we do answer your questions about estate planning and estate settlement in Michigan. And we don't send you a bill. I'm your host, Tom Doyle, estate planning attorney, lifelong Michigan resident, and ambassador for all things good in this great state of Michigan. Welcome to today's program. Well, I woke up this morning, light coating of snow in different areas here in Lansing, and as many of you know, I spent last winter in San Francisco, and I'm still not sure that I'm really ready for this snow stuff again, but it will be coming, and I'm sure that we will be just fine. Last week's show, how April 2003, October 2012, and January 2019 might affect your estate plan. I talked about how if your plan was prepared before any of those dates, again, April 2003, October 2012, or January 2019, you might need to have documents updated. So if that applies to you, I encourage you to listen to last week's program. Today, talking about a topic that comes up frequently in conversations with clients, and I know I've talked about it, I think probably years ago now on this program, but it's one that repeatedly comes up, and I thought it was worth at least revisiting today, and that is, will the state of Michigan take your home after you receive Medicaid? But please remember, what I'm about to discuss during the program is, as always, for educational purposes only. It is up to you to work with your attorney to determine what's appropriate for you, because this is not legal advice. Again, our question today, can the state of Michigan take your home if you receive Medicaid? So let's begin with, what is Medicaid? Well, Medicaid is a federally funded program. It is administered by the states, including the state of Michigan. And essentially, for our purposes today, Medicaid is the program that pays for long-term health care. So if you end up in a nursing home and it's a long-term situation, you might be looking for the federal government and the state of Michigan to be paying for that care. Well, essentially, Medicaid is a program that is going to pay for long-term health care only if you are what the government considers to be poor. And what does that mean? Well, essentially, for a single person, you can have a house. And that house can be worth, I believe currently it's in the neighborhood of $560,000 plus dollars. You can have a car. You can have a prepaid funeral plan, and you can have $2,000. If you have more than that, then you have to spend it, what we call spending it down, until you get to the point that you only have that house, that car, that prepaid funeral plan, and that $2,000. Then, as far as what you own, you will be considered poor. There's some income requirements as well, but we're just looking at the asset status for purposes of today's conversation. A married couple, one house, still that same value in that neighborhood of $560,000 plus dollars. One car. Each spouse can have a prepaid funeral plan. The spouse who's in the nursing home can have $2,000. And then the spouse who's not in the nursing home is going to have an additional amount of assets. It's going to be in the neighborhood. There's some calculations that you have to go through, but it's in the neighborhood of $124,000 to $125,000. But calculations have to be made relative to those type of assets. But again, if we look at that single person and we look at that married couple, what is the largest asset by way of value that you can own and still qualify for Medicaid? Clearly, it is your home. And for some clients, that might be the only main asset that they still own. So it's the largest asset that you can still have and still qualify for Medicaid assistance if you are in that long-term care facility. Now, the federal government requires all of the states, including the state of Michigan, to try to recover the cost of Medicaid benefits that were paid for you from your estate after you die. It's what's known as Medicaid estate recovery. Again, it's the federal government requirement. Basically, it's the federal government's way of trying to get money back that has been spent for Medicaid. So you go on Medicaid, you're in that long-term care facility, the government provides Medicaid benefits for you after you die. Now the federal government is requiring the state of Michigan to try and recover some of those costs from your estate. And Michigan has a statute. We, in fact, were the last state to develop a Medicaid estate recovery law. We had gone for many years without it, but we now have that statute as a requirement. I'm sorry for that telephone interruption. I thought I had all the phones turned off today. But getting back to the federal government requires the state to try and recover it. That's the Medicaid estate recovery law. So let's start with this thought, though. Before we look at the Medicaid recovery law, most clients that we work with would look and say, hey, if we have a choice after our death, we would rather have the home go to our children rather than go to the state of Michigan. It's the largest asset. I paid my mortgage payments for many years. I developed equity in my home. I wasn't the one that was responsible for my illness that caused me to go into the nursing home. I want to leave something for my children. And so how is it that I can leave my home to my children even if I've gone on Medicaid? Well, let's look at the Michigan Medicaid estate recovery law to get some better sense of how that all works. Essentially, the law is implemented through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, MDHSS. And we look at what the statute requires, and we look at what the rules have been developed by MDHSS. And essentially, it is MDHSS that is going to go after your home to get repayment of Medicaid payments that have been paid on your behalf. Now, fortunately, and this is key, fortunately, under the state of Michigan, normally the state can only go after assets that you own that go through probate. And that's key. That's key when we look at how it is that we can look at trying to avoid the state of Michigan from recovering against your home, because some states' statutes are different. They can go after a trust. They can go after assets that have beneficiary designations on them, etc. But generally speaking, in Michigan, the state can go only after the assets that go through probate unless you are one of the individuals who has a long-term care policy. And through that long-term care policy, there was a program that the state of Michigan allowed you to keep more of your assets beyond the value of your home. And under those situations, the state is allowed to go after additional assets. But we're talking about general here. You don't have a long-term care policy. You simply went in the nursing home and the government paid for your nursing home care. So, obviously then, to avoid your home from being sold after your death, in order to repay the state of Michigan, what do you need? You need an estate plan under which your home does not go through probate after you die. Again, the state can only go after the home if it goes through probate. If the home doesn't go through probate, then they can't go after the asset. Before we talk about how that gets done, keep in mind Medicaid estate recovery doesn't apply to everyone. It's only going to apply to Medicaid beneficiaries who are 55 years of age and older, and individuals who have received long-term care service anytime on or after September 30th, 2007. So it doesn't apply to everybody, but it certainly applies to probably most of you who are concerned about it and are listening to today's program. Additionally, MDHSS is going to defer being the important term here, defer recovery if any of the following individuals is still living. 1, if a Medicaid beneficiary spouse is still alive, MDHSS will defer recovery until that spouse dies. They will also defer recovery if a Medicaid beneficiary's child who is less than 20 years old, 21 years of age, again, will defer it until the child is 21. Medicaid beneficiary's child who is blind or permanently disabled, again, MDHS is going to defer recovery as long as that child is still alive. And MDHSS will defer recovery while certain people are in fact living in your home. One of those would be a survivor who lived in the home and provided care that allowed the Medicaid recipient to remain in their home for at least 2 years prior to the recipient's admission into a medical facility. What does that mean? If you have somebody living in the home with you, providing care for you, and that enabled you to, and allowed you to remain in your home for at least 2 years immediately before you are admitted to a long-term care facility, MDHSS is going to defer recovery while that person is still living in your home. That might be a child who's been providing care for you. Also, MDHSS will defer recovery if a beneficiary's sibling who has an equity interest in the home and who lived in the home for at least 1 year immediately prior to your admission to that long-term care facility, again, MDHSS is going to defer recovery while that person is still living in the home. And third, MDHS will also temporarily defer estate recovery if it determines that not to do so would result in what is considered an undue hardship. We're not going to spend today talking about what undue hardship means, but the important consideration is this. The estate recovery law only applies if you're 55 years of and older, and if you've returned long-term care benefits after September 30th, 2007, and under certain circumstances, MDHS is going to defer, not permanently ignore or permanently not do anything to try and recover, but will defer recovery for certain situations. With all that having been said, then let's get back to the key. The key consideration for you is this: to avoid your home from having to be sold, in order to repay the state of Michigan, you need to have an appropriate estate plan under which your home does not go through probate after you die. So avoiding probate of your estate becomes essential relative to keeping your home. And there might be a number of options available for you on keeping your home from having to go through probate. And we, Amanda and I, would be happy to have a consultation with you to explore what options might be available for you in order to keep your home from having to go through probate, so that it would not be subject to Michigan's Medicaid estate recovery law. It might be something that's called a Ladybird Deed. It's a particular type of deed that has been recognized by MDHSS and the courts as being a way to transfer potentially a home without it having to go through probate. Now, some people are going to say, well, let me put my house in a trust. Well, it's not as simple as that. Simply putting a house inside a revocable living trust today might be a bad thing when it comes to Medicaid planning. So there's some considerations that have to be made. Even if you have a trust, simply putting the house inside that trust might not be appropriate. Some clients are going to say, well, what if I put somebody else's name on the property? What if I give the property away? Then you're going to be into some of these 5-year look-back rules that become important relative to even qualifying for Medicaid in the first place. So if you're sitting there saying, hey, I would like to have my home go to my children and not have to be sold in order to repay the state of Michigan, we encourage you, call and talk to us. We'll be happy to have that consultation and explore with you what options you have for creating a plan to avoid probate and avoid Michigan's Medicaid estate recovery law. Again, just a reminder that Amanda and I, not only relative to talking about Michigan's Medicaid estate recovery law, but we would be honored to have the opportunity to help you protect your loved ones by putting together your estate plan or amending a current plan that you already have, or perhaps assisting you in settling a loved one's estate. Now, because of COVID-19 and trying to keep everybody safe because of COVID-19, we are pleased to be offering our Planning from Home service. Through our Planning from Home service, you can obtain your estate plan or individual documents simply by going to our website, which is doylelawpc.com, and using our Planning from Home service. Essentially, what you'll do is download a copy of our guidebook, set up a telephone consultation, and we'll talk to you by phone. We can do it as a Zoom call if you want to, but to talk to you and discuss with you how it is that we can be of assistance to you. Also, if you are an existing client and you're looking at wanting to update your current estate plan, again, go to our website, doylelawpc.com, click on the Virtual Office tab, and under there you will find a tab called Update My Plan, and that will walk you through the steps that we can utilize in order to update the existing plan that we have already prepared for you. So I guess that's going to be it for today's show. I should note, though, deer season is in full swing. If you're going to be out and about hunting, make sure you stay safe. Just before deer season started and the deer began moving around more, unfortunately, one of those deers decided that the right thing to do was to run into the side of my car. Normally, you think of the car running into the deer, and did you have time to stop before the deer? No, this deer decided it should jump right out of the woods and directly into the side of my car. If you have a comment about the program or a topic that you would like to have me discuss or questions that you would like to have answered, please send me an email, tom@tuesdaywithtom.com, or mail me a postcard, Tom Doyle, P.O. Box 16066, Lansing, Michigan 4901. Of course, we encourage you and your family and friends to follow us on Facebook at Tuesday with Tom. Follow the law office at Doyle Law PC because we do different things on both the Tuesday with Tom and the office Facebook and Twitter accounts. Remember, too, Tuesday with Tom app is available in the App Store and Google Play. The program, I'm pleased to announce, is now available as well on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, and Google Podcast. And you can always ask your smart speaker to play Tuesday with Tom. Thanks again for spending some of your time with us on this Tuesday afternoon. And as always, I hope that you have an awesome day and an awesome week in Michigan. Stay safe. Tuesday with Tom has been brought to you by the estate planning attorneys at Doyle Law PC. To learn how we can help you with your estate plan or with settling a loved one's estate, please call us today at 517-323-7366. That's 517-323-7366.